All right, so good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching this video. But today we are going to be going through slides, hold on, give me just 1 second, 15 through 17. So that is your assignment for today. Get the notes for slides 15 through 17. And with these slides, I do need to do a little bit of a disclaimer prior to me actually getting started. As you guys know, I do not promote any sort of religion. I teach Buddhism, the same as I teach Hinduism, the same as I teach Christianity, the same as I teach Judaism, the same as I teach ancient Greek religions. Everybody had a religion at different points in history, so I teach them all the same with the same amount of respect. I am not promoting any sort of religion. It is up to you what you believe in. I do not have a say in that. I care about you as a person, not necessarily what your belief system is. I feel I always have to make that disclaimer. If we were in class, I would have made the exact same disclaimer to all of you. But we are going to start talking about Christianity. We have touched on Christianity briefly when we looked at Judaism earlier in the year, but we are going to just continue on with that today. All right, so like I said, I'm going through slides 15 through 17 today. Feel free to pause this video at any point in time. My expectations for you and your note-taking hasn't changed. You can write down what you feel is important on the slides. You can pause me talking and write down something if you think I say something important.
Please pardon the interruption. There is a hashtag Thanks Corona poll on the board, but you cannot all come at once because we have to stay 6 feet away.
Sorry about that. We do have a restriction today at school on our work day that we can't be close to each other, so that's gonna be fun. We're not really following it though. Shh, don't tell people. But so we are going through slides 15 through 17. But so in 63 BC, the Romans will end up conquering the Jewish kingdom of Judea. Even though the Jews will have their own kings, the Romans will allow them to continue to have their own kings because when Rome conquered an area, they were allowed to keep their government. But Rome will have to approve the Jewish leaders. If Rome's like, yep, you're good, you can keep them, then they were allowed to keep those kings. If they weren't, then they would have to find somebody else because Rome still had an emperor, Rome was still in charge, and so if you did anything that might upset Rome, they would come back at you. But during their history, Jews will be treated very poorly. We have looked at that when we looked at Judaism. They'll be enslaved to the Egyptians. They were enslaved to the Babylonians. They had to wander the desert for 40 years. In more modern day history, they were persecuted by Hitler in World War II. The Jews are historically treated very, very, very badly. Anytime anything goes wrong, the Jews are blamed for it. One day, the Jews might be blamed for the coronavirus. I mean, I'm joking, but it is true. The Jews do get blamed for a lot of things throughout history, and they are treated very poorly throughout history. So many of these Jewish people will want to be delivered from the oppression and from these foreign rulers. They want to go back to ruling themselves, not having Rome tell them what to do. And some Jewish writings had previously promised them a Messiah. Some Jewish people believed that that meant that there would be an earthly ruler put into place that would be sent by God for these people. But there were differing opinions from the Jewish people about what could actually be expected from a Messiah. Some people believe that this guy would be a descendant of King David, who had previously been a Jewish ruler back in the 900s BC, almost 900 years before Rome has started. And some people believe that the Messiah would free them from either slavery or from, obviously, the Roman government, whichever case it might have been for them. But there will be a Jew born in the province of Judea, and his name will be Jesus. And Jesus, since he is born a Jew, he will follow the teachings of Judaism. And we have previously looked at the teachings of Judaism. They have the 10 Commandments: don't kill people, don't steal, don't lie, don't do any of that stuff. But Jesus will also start to teach other ideas and practices that will be slightly different from what other Jewish teachers are saying. So we know about Jesus based off of 4 accounts. And these accounts are known as the Gospels, and were written after Jesus had died by these four guys named Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And these Gospels make up part of what is the New Testament in the Christian Bible, and it is joined by other writings as well. We'll talk about some of them probably tomorrow. But yeah, so according to the Gospels, Jesus was born in a city called Bethlehem, and he grew up in a town called Nazareth. We talked about his birth back when we looked at Judaism again. If you remember the story, Jesus' mom is pregnant. They go to be taxed. They can't find a place in the hotels because everybody and their brother is there in order to be counted, in order to be taxed. And so it's this whole thing. Jesus gets born in a stable, everything like that. And Christians will later on celebrate his birthday on the holiday Christmas. And in the accounts, Jesus will be raised by his mother Mary and a carpenter named Joseph, who was her husband. But as a young adult, Jesus will become a traveling teacher. Biblical accounts say that he'll perform several different miracles, like curing the sick, allowing the lame to walk. He'll even do things like turning water into wine. And I've had people ask me before, like, why is that a miracle, Miss Lemon? Like, why does that matter? And the reason that it matters is because in those times, the water wasn't always necessarily safe to drink. You needed to, like, wine was much safer because it has gone through the fermentation process. It will have, like, the bacteria in it to kill, like, the bad bacteria that could potentially make you sick. But Jesus will start to gather followers as he teaches, and his closest followers will be known as disciples, and Jesus will have 12 of them, and they are Peter, Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, Matthew, another James, Simon, Thaddeus, and Judas Iscariot. Judas Iscariot, if you remember back from when we talked about Judaism, he will be the guy who ends up betraying Jesus. But Jesus will teach compassion.
2 James, quick announcements. If you are working on getting grades completed,
We're already done.
you can probably put that on hold. Report cards will be postponed. So it'd be more beneficial to spend this time getting plans together for e-learning. Thanks.
So this video will probably go up. But Jesus, sorry for all the interruptions, and I'm really bad at editing, so this is all done in one take, and I don't really want to start over because I'm already like 8 minutes into the video. Sorry. But Jesus will preach things like compassion, justice, and about the coming of God's kingdom. And he'll often deliver these messages in the form of parables. And parables is just a fancy word, meaning that they're stories with some sort of moral behind them. And his 3 most famous parables are the Good Samaritan, the Prodigal Son, and the Lost Sheep. The Good Samaritan is a story about this guy. He gets robbed and beaten pretty much to death, and he's a Jewish man, and these Jewish religious leaders just walk right by him and pay him no attention, or like, I'm too busy, I got stuff to do. And then a Samaritan walks by, and Samaritans and Jews did not interact. They did not get along. They were not supposed to like have any sort of communication with each other. And the Samaritan gets the Jewish man who's been beaten. He gets some help, medical help. He puts him up in a room, like, and he takes care of him. And so it's about, you know, looking past people's like what might make them different from you and just being a good person. And then the story about the prodigal son is about 2 brothers. The youngest brother looks at his dad and he says, I want all the money that will be mine when you die. And so the dad gives him his inheritance, and he leaves and he goes and he blows through the money. He gambles it, he parties, he does all these like stuff that he probably shouldn't do, and he ends up just completely broke. And so he ends up getting a job feeding pigs. And like, as he's feeding the pigs and he's starving, he's hungry because he has no money, he can't eat. So he goes, you know what, my dad's hired men, their lives are better than mine, so I'm gonna go back home and I'm gonna hang out with my dad, get him to hire me on because I'm not good enough to be his son anymore. So his dad sees him, he welcomes him home, he treats him like his son, there's like a big party. The older brother gets jealous and is like, why are we treating this guy this way? And his dad's like, calm down, all of this stuff is yours, but your brother came home, and that's what's most important here. The lost sheep, it's just what it sounds like. A sheep gets lost, a shepherd goes out, he finds it, he brings it back, the end. But Jesus' most famous teachings were delivered in what is known as the Sermon on the Mount. The sermon will open with what is known as Beatitudes, or blessings, essentially, is what that means. And in this Sermon on the Mount, Jesus will encourage people not only to follow the laws, but also to change their way of thinking. So if the law says don't kill people, Jesus says don't kill people, but also love people, like love your enemy and pray for them and like want good things for them. Like don't just hate them, don't just not kill them. That's not good enough anymore. And Jesus will also encourage his followers to live very simply and very humbly, because he says having a lot of wealth and a lot of money will make you like greedy and not necessarily the best person, and that's not what God wanted for you. Despite his teachings of love and acceptance and helping people and all this good, feel-good, fuzzy stuff, a lot of Jewish leaders are not going to like him. For example, Jesus would do things that would make them mad, like forgive people who had broken religious laws. And the Jewish leaders felt like only God had that ability, and Jesus was coming along and making all these claims like, yeah, you're fine now. And they didn't feel like he had that authority to do that. Jesus also will associate with outcasts, so tax collectors, prostitutes, people who were frowned upon in society. And Jesus is hanging out with them. He's eating with them. He's joking with them, like all this stuff. And a lot of religious leaders, again, are like, these are not good people to spend time with. What are you doing? But most shocking, and the biggest problem that these religious leaders had, was coming from his followers, that Jesus was the Messiah that the Jews had been waiting for so long. But that slide's 15 through 17. It's pretty short. The next lesson is a little bit longer. It's about 20 minutes versus today's 12-ish minutes. But it's still nothing too bad, nothing too horrible, I hope. But anyway, I hope you are having a great day. I love you so much. And I hope that I get to see you again soon. Have a good day. Bye.